One of the most common questions being asked and fears being expressed to me by friends, family, clients, well, pretty much anybody who knows I'm in real estate is,
how do you live with yourself?
Is the market just as bad, or is it going to be worse than 2008? We're going to break that down in just a second, but first, welcome to Expectations versus Real Estate. I'm Nate Necochea. I'm a realtor in Orange County, California. My goal here isn't to convince you one way or another. It's simply to add context to some of the data that you're being inundated with in the media on a daily basis. That way, you're armed with some additional perspective to make up your own mind. Thanks so much for joining me. Now let's add some context.
Context is everything.
Keeping Current Matters recently did a post on this very topic where they collected data from the National Association of Realtors, the Mortgage Bankers Association, and Adam Data Solutions. So let's take a look at some of what they found. Rather than bore you by reading the entire thing verbatim, I'll go over the main points and put a link in the description so you can read the full thing at your leisure, if you're into that sort of thing. All right, here we go. Okay, so the first comparison that KCM makes between now and then is housing supply. For historical context, there were too many homes for sale during the housing crisis, many of which were short sales and foreclosures, and that caused prices to fall dramatically. Supply has increased since the start of this year, but there's still a shortage of inventory available overall, primarily due to almost 15 years of underbuilding homes. If we take a look at the graph from the National Association of Realtors that KCM used in their determination, you'll see that from 2007 through 2010 and even 2011, the average month's supply of homes was astronomically higher. 2007, 8.9 months, 2008, 10.4 months, 2009, 8.8 months, and 2010, 9.4 months. What that means is there was a huge oversupply of homes, which included everything from foreclosures and short sales to some standard sales. Now, if you compare that with today, in 2020, there's 3.1 months, 2021, 2.3 months, and 2022, just 3.2 months of supply. Now, obviously, those are national numbers, and we know that national real estate is definitely not local real estate. So let's take a look at Orange County specifically. What the data shows is that not only are active listings only slightly up from last year and actually down from 2020, but also new listings coming to market are down 30.9% from this time last year when seller sentiment and buyer demand was much higher.
Oops.
So we have this situation where new homes aren't coming on the market very fast. Existing inventory is low, but it's still selling in an average of just over 2 months. So the issue becomes supply and demand. Low supply requires less demand in order to keep home values stable and in some cases even still growing. So reason number one why now is different than then, inventory. The second metric that KCM uses to compare and contrast then and now is mortgage standards. During the lead up to the housing crisis, it was much easier to get a home loan than it is today. Running up to 2006, banks were creating artificial demand by lowering lending standards and making it easy for just about anyone to qualify for a home loan or refinance their current home.
Come on, no, seriously.
Back then, lending institutions took on much greater risk in both the person and the mortgage products offered. That led to mass defaults, foreclosures, and falling prices. Today, things are different, and purchasers face much higher standards from mortgage companies. If you remember, there was a time when job verification, qualified income, and credit score were, well, how do I say this? Flexible. Let's take a look at this chart of the data from the Mortgage Bankers Association about the Mortgage Credit Availability Index. For the purposes of this chart, the higher the number, the easier it is to get a mortgage. So take a look at June of 2006, which has a score of 868.7. So at that time, there was immense mortgage credit availability. So it didn't matter if your only source of incomes were recycling aluminum and selling the golf balls you fished out of your local course water hazard. You could still get a loan. Now, contrast that with September of 2022, which has a score of 102.5. Now, I'm no mathematician, but I believe that's significantly lower. Which obviously that means there's less mortgage credit available, and combined with stricter lending standards, those loans are more secure and far less likely to go into foreclosure. So reason number 2, now is not 2008, lending standards. That brings us to comparison number 3, foreclosure starts. According to KCM, foreclosure activity has been lower since the crash, largely because buyers, today are more qualified and less likely to default on their loans. Homeowners today have options they just didn't have in the housing crisis when so many people owed more on their mortgages than their homes were worth. Today, many homeowners are equity rich, and that equity comes in large part from the way home prices have appreciated over time, and that's according to CoreLogic. Rick Sharga, the Executive VP of Market Intelligence at Adam Data, explains the impact of this. Very few of the properties entering the foreclosure process have reverted to the lender at the end of the foreclosure. We believe that this may be an indication that borrowers are leveraging their equity and selling their homes rather than risking the loss of their equity in a foreclosure auction. If we take a look at the graph, starting at Q1 of 2007, we can see the volume of foreclosure starts beginning to rise, and it's approaching the 300,000 number. We can follow that trend through Q4 of 2010, noticing the peak in Q2 of 2009. Now, compare those volumes to Q1 through Q3 of 2022. The difference is pretty staggering, and it's attributed to not only stricter lending standards, but the foreclosure moratorium, and also the strength of home values that give owners options outside of foreclosure. And those are options they just didn't have during the crash. So reason number 3, drastically lower foreclosure starts. So what does this tell us about the market and what to expect? Well, while there are absolutely no guarantees, the data is telling us that today is not like 2008, and it isn't looking like it'll be worse. The factors influencing the market are nearly completely opposite.
Like comparing apples to oranges.
My goal here is to give some context to what you may be hearing from the mainstream media, YouTube, or God forbid, TikTok. This data should help alleviate some of your fears, or at the minimum give you some additional perspective to combat the selectively edited narratives that are kind of just being hurled at you. If you found this useful, please hit the like button and comment your thoughts and questions below. Thanks for watching.
Where you go from there is a choice I leave to you.